Gather round, friends, and lend an ear to the embers of the unexplained. Percy Hawthorne here, your guide through the dusty archives of the extraordinary. Tonight's file, pulled from the shelves marked Manhattan's Children, isn't just a ghost story whispered over Tennessee moonshine. It's a chilling testament to ambition's shadow, a secret buried beneath concrete and Cold War paranoia that refused to stay dead. It starts, as so many tangled webs do, in the frantic crucible of war, deep in the hills of Tennessee. Oak Ridge, 1943. A city that wasn't built overnight on stolen farmland, humming with a singular, terrifying purpose: enrich uranium for the gadget. The graphite reactor, X-10, was a beast of graphite blocks and uranium slugs, one of the first steps on the path to unleashing the atom's fury. Few knew its true purpose. Fewer still knew about the faint, anomalous energy signature picked up during its early runs. Dismissed as instrument error, a transient fluctuation in the unfathomable energies being wrestled with. It wasn't. Something else rode the neutron flux into that concrete womb. Something hungry. They called it Project Nightingale in a single, heavily redacted memo that survived purges and paranoia, a brief notation about unexpected bioluminescent residue exhibiting passive energy absorption characteristics found near a coolant leak. Contained, they thought, studied briefly under Level 9 protocols, then sealed within the reactor's labyrinthine auxiliary chambers as the war effort consumed all attention. Forgotten, buried beneath the weight of history and radioactive decay. 80 years later, Oak Ridge wears its history like a faded badge. Tourists snap pictures of the old guard towers, decay, 25-footprint now a meadow. But near the fenced-off, decaying hulk of X-10, whispers started, not of ghosts, but of living nightmares. Hunters reported deer with too many eyes, clustered like tumors along their spines, glowing faintly in the dusk. Fishermen spoke of catfish in the Clinch River tributaries sporting vestigial limbs, their scales shimmering with an unnatural, sickly green phosphorescence. Trees near perimeter fence grew twisted, bark peeling to reveal with that pulse with a slow, deep light. Locals called it the glow rot, blaming old contamination, dismissing it as hill country superstition. But the reports grew stranger, more frequent. Pets vanished. Trail cameras captured blurred, multi-limbed shapes moving with impossible speed through the undergrowth. Fear, a low hum beneath the surface of the quiet town, began to resonate. Ilara Vance heard the hum louder than most. Now in her late 80s, her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes, behind thick bifocals, were sharp as flint. She'd been 19, fresh off a Tennessee farm, when she signed up for war work. They'd tested her, found her unnervingly good with intricate machinery, and unfazed by the Geiger counter's staccato clicks. She became a calibrator for X-10's monitoring systems. She saw the Nightingale residue. Not just residue, she insisted in her meticulously kept, coded journals. She saw it move, a slick, iridescent film that seemed to breathe radiation, coalescing into fleeting, amoeboid shapes within its shielded observation chamber. The memo called it contained. Ilara knew the lead line box felt alive. When the order came to seal the auxiliary chamber and focus purely on production, a profound unease settled in her bones. It never left. The recent reports from the woods near X-10 were the confirmation she dreaded for a lifetime. The children were awake, hungry, spreading. She knew she couldn't face it alone. Her search for someone who wouldn't dismiss her as a crazy old woman led her down the rabbit hole of the unexplained. Podcasts about cryptids, UFO forums, obscure scientific journals exploring fringe biology. One name kept surfacing, associated with quiet credibility in the midst of the noise: Gabriel Sterling, a former linguistics professor whose sudden shift into cryptologic consulting for entities like Scientific Horizons hinted at deeper, stranger waters. His analyses of anomalous phenomena were characterized by a startling clarity, cutting through hysteria to find underlying patterns, often referencing emotional or environmental resonances in ways that felt unsettlingly intuitive. His partner, frequently mentioned with exasperated affection in forum anecdotes, was Milo Hart, a whirlwind of chaotic energy described as a human polygraph with photographic memory and a knack for being in the wrong place at the right time, usually armed with a terrible pun. Ilera tracked down an obscure contact form linked to Sterling's consulting work. Her message was succinct, laced with a chilling weight of first-hand knowledge. Project Nightingale is active. X-10 containment failed. The children are in the woods. They remember the taste. Help us before it's too late again. The humid Tennessee air lay thick as syrup as Gabriel Sterling stepped out of his rented sedan onto Ilera Vance's porch. Cicadas screamed in the pines. He didn't need his nascent, unnerving gift. The empathic resonance he'd only begun to understand since a near-fatal encounter with a non-terrestrial artifact 2 years prior. To feel the tension here, it vibrated in the unnaturally quiet birdsong, in the faint, acrid tang beneath the scent of honeysuckle. It felt like the land itself was holding its breath. He was a man built for libraries and complex ciphers, late 30s, with eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, perpetually searching for the hidden syntax in the world. Oak Ridge's open secret. Its wartime sacrifice hung heavy, but layered over with something sharper, older, and profoundly wrong. The screen door slammed open before he could knock. Took you long enough. Thought, maybe you got abducted by the Knoxville traffic vortex. Or worse, decided my porch swing wasn't worth the trip. Milo Hart bounded out, a whirlwind of nervous energy in faded band t-shirt and cargo shorts, a half-eaten energy bar in one hand. His eyes, bright and constantly scanning, missed nothing. The slight tremor in Gabriel's hand as he adjusted his glasses, the specific pattern of lichen on the porch steps, the unnatural stillness of the woods beyond Ilera's property line. His cosmic intuition, as he jokingly called the gut-deep warnings that had saved his skin more than once, was currently humming a low, steady note of danger. Gabriel offered a faint, weary smile. The vortex was formidable. Milo. Hello, Miss Vance. His voice was calm, measured, a stark contrast to Milo's exuberance. He extended a hand towards the elderly woman who appeared in the doorway behind Milo. As his fingers brushed hers, a jolt went through him, not physical, but emotional, a complex cascade. The sharp, metallic fear of a young woman facing the unknown power of the atom, the crushing weight of decades-long dread, the fierce, protective anger of a witness silenced by history, and beneath it all, a chilling, hollow hunger that wasn't her own. He flinched, withdrawing his hand slightly. "You've been carrying this a long time," he murmured, the resonance of her buried terror echoing in his chest. Ilera's gaze sharpened, assessing him. "You feel it," she stated, not a question. "Good. Come inside. The woods have ears lately, and not the kind that belong to raccoons." Her small living room was a museum of the atomic age, framed photographs of the secret city under construction, technical manuals, a chunk of graphite on a shelf. But pride of place went to her journals, meticulously coded entries dating back to 1943. Milo was instantly drawn to them, his photographic memory already absorbing the strange symbols and diagrams. Whoa, is this Enigma variant, mixed with chemical notation, and little doodles of blobs? He traced a finger over a page showing a crude sketch of an iridescent, multi-lobe shape next to radiation level readings. Cute, in a deeply unsettling, probably wants to eat my face kind of way. Ilera settled into a worn armchair, the weight of her years and her secret pressing down. We called it the Nightingale, not because it sang, but because its emissions registered on our sensitive audio gear sometimes. A faint, discordant hum, like metal stressed to breaking. It arrived with the reactor, we think, hitched a ride on cosmic rays, maybe drawn to the strongest energy source on the planet at the time. She described the sealed chamber, the observation through thick leaded glass. It wasn't inert. It fed. The radiation levels dipped slightly wherever it concentrated, and it learned, adapted, started forming pseudopods, testing the seals. Then the order came. Seal it in. Weld the auxiliary chamber shut. Focus on production. The war couldn't wait. Her voice cracked. We buried it alive with the heart of the atom bomb. Gabriel listened, his mind working, a parasite, symbiotic or predatory, drawn to radiation, potentially sentient, capable of adaptation. Sealed but not destroyed. The containment, he said quietly, Time, decay, seismic activity, or deliberate sabotage? Ilara's face hardened. A few years back, vandals, kids, probably thinking it was just an old building, broke into the lower levels near the auxiliary chamber access. They didn't go far. The dose rate spiked dangerously, but they compromised the outer seals. I reported it. Filed requests for proper remediation, got shuffled between departments. Budget constraints. Low priority. Then the story started. She pointed a bony finger towards a window, towards a dark line of trees hiding X-10. It's out, and it's been busy, making children. Milo whistled low. So the glow-rot deer? The six-legged catfish? That's not just mutation. That's infestation? Assimilation, Gabriel corrected, a chill settling in his gut. He felt the echo of that hollow hunger again, stronger now, emanating from the direction of the reactor. It incorporates biological matter, repurposes it, uses the radiation as both food and catalyst. Those animals aren't just mutated. They're hosts, vessels. He recalled the patterns in Ilara's journals. The symbols hinted at exponential growth curves, population dynamics. It's been replicating. Slowly at first, confined. But the broken seal, it gave it access to the wider environment. And now, the population is reaching a critical threshold. It needs more. More food, Milo said, the levity gone from his voice. More radiation. Or bigger hosts. He looked at Ilara, then Gabriel, the implication hanging heavy. Human hosts. Gabriel nodded grimly. The old reactor site has residual contamination, but it's diffuse, decaying. It needs a concentrated source, like the medical isotope facility over in Knoxville. Or, he didn't finish. The specter of a new reactor, a power plant, a research facility, flickered in all their minds. The children would follow the energy. We need to see the breach, understand its current state, find where they're concentrated. Ilara insisted on coming. I sealed it. I need to see what I unleashed. She produced a set of yellow key cards and a crumbling map of the X-10 lower levels, marked with faded radiation symbols. Security's lax, mostly perimeter fences, and cameras pointed at the main entrance. The old service tunnels, less so, but the dose rates down there will be quick, Gabriel said, already packing Geiger counters Ilara provided. Along with high-intensity UV lamps she theorized might temporarily disrupt the Nightingale's photonic processes. Milo stuffed his pockets with protein bars, a multi-tool, and a small, surprisingly powerful drone he called Nibbler. You never know when you'll need an aerial snack delivery or reconnaissance, he quipped, though the usual spark was dimmed by the palpable tension. Nightfall offered cover, but amplified the sense of trespass. They parked a mile away, approaching X-10 through dense, silent woods. The oppressive feeling Gabriel had sensed earlier intensified with every step. The trees here were wrong. Leaves hung limp, veins glowing faintly with that same sickly green. Fungus on the trunks pulsed like slow, diseased hearts. The air hummed, not with insects, but with a deep, subsonic vibration that set their teeth on edge. Milo's intuition was screaming now, a constant, high-pitched whine in his mind. He pointed mutely to disturbed earth. Tracks that looked like a large dog's, but with too many toes, ending in deep clawed gouges. Ilara led them to a collapsed drainage culvert, half hidden by thorny overgrowth. Emergency access. Used it once during a flood scare. The rusted grate yielded to Milo's multi-tool and Gabriel's focused strength. The smell that wafted out was a cocktail of damp concrete, ozone, and something else. Sweetly rotten, like decaying fruit mixed with battery acid. Inside, darkness swallowed them, broken only by their headlamps. The tunnel was cramped, slick with algae that also glowed faintly. The Geiger counters chattered incessantly, the dose climbing steadily as they moved deeper. The subsonic hum was louder here, vibrating through the concrete under their feet. It felt like walking into the gullet of a sleeping beast. After navigating a maze of crumbling corridors marked by faded radiation trefoils, they reached a heavy, riveted steel door. Ilara's key card, surprisingly, still worked in the ancient reader. A green light flickered, and bolts grown open with a shriek of protest that echoed terrifyingly down the empty halls. Beyond lay the auxiliary chamber, or what was left of it. The welding Alara described was torn open, not by tools, but by something that had melted and warped the steel from the inside out. Jagged edges glistened with a viscous, iridescent slime. The chamber itself was cavernous, dominated by the decaying hulk of old reactor components. But it was the walls that stopped them cold. They were alive. A thick, pulsating carpet of the same iridescent substance covered every surface, glowing with an internal light that shifted through blues, greens, and violets. It throbbed in time with the subsonic hum. Tendrils, thick as arms, snaked across the floor, up support columns, vanishing into ventilation shafts. Embedded within the living mass were shapes. The skeletal remains of small animals, half dissolved, merged with the glowing biomass. And newer additions, the unmistakable forms of raccoons, a large dog, even a young deer, all partially assimilated, their bodies grotesquely resculpted, eyes replaced by clusters of glowing nodules. The air crackled with static, thick with the scent of ozone and decay. Mother, Alara breathed, her voice thick with horror. It's grown. So much. Suddenly, Milo grabbed Gabriel's arm, his face pale. Down, he hissed, shoving Alara behind a rusted console. Gabriel ducked instinctively. A split second later, something large and multi-limbed dropped from the ceiling, landing silently where Gabriel's head had been. It unfolded itself, a nightmare fusion of what might have been a large possum and something utterly alien. Its body was elongated, covered in patches of matted fur and slick, glowing hide. For spindly, jointed legs ended in sharp, chitinous claws. But its head was a horror. No eyes, just a cluster of glowing green nodules above a wide, lamprey-like mouth lined with concentric rings of needle-sharp, crystalline teeth that hummed faintly. Two vestigial, bony arms ending in hooked claws twitched at its sides. It raised its head, the nodules pulsating, seemingly tasting the air. Milo's drone nibbler shot out his pocket, its tiny LEDs flashing erratically. The creature's head snapped towards it, the nodules flaring. With impossible speed, a whip-like tongue, glowing and barbed, lashed out, snatching Nibbler for the air and retracting it into the lamprey maw with a sickening crunch of plastic and metal. Okay, Milo whispered, voice tight. Definitely face-eating territory. Plan? Preferably involving not being tongue-whipped into a glow stick. Gabriel fought down a wave of primal terror, focusing on the empathic resonance washing off the creature. Hunger. Cold, ancient, insatiable hunger. But also a low thermal connection to the biomass on the walls, to the hum filling the chamber. It wasn't alone. He sensed others nearby, moving in the shadows above, drawn by the disturbance. The UV, he hissed to Alara. Now! Alara fumbled with the heavy lamp, her hands shaking. Gabriel and Milo switched on theirs, bathing the immediate area in harsh, actinic light. The creature recoiled instantly, letting out a high-pitched, chittering shriek that scraped against their nerves. The nodules on its head dimmed and it scrambled backwards, its movements suddenly clumsy, disoriented. The biomass on the walls nearby seemed to recoil, the pulsating light flickering erratically. It works! Alara gasped, but the victory was fleeting. The shriek was a beacon. From ventilation shafts, from behind decaying machinery, more shapes detached themselves from the glowing walls. Smaller ones, like twisted rats with glowing spines. Larger ones, canine-sized with multiple limbs and snapping, crystalline jaws. And another of the large possum-like hunters, dropping down silently. Their collective hum intensified, a physical pressure in the air. The UV light caused discomfort, hesitation, but it wasn't stopping them. They were adapting, moving just outside the beam's direct focus, starting to flank. Back to the door, Gabriel yelled, sweeping his UV light in an arc, trying to hold back the encroaching tide of glowing flesh and teeth. Milo grabbed Alara's arm, pulling her towards the exit. He snatched a discarded length of rebar, swinging it wildly as a smaller creature, like a malformed squirrel with a glowing tail barb, lunged at his legs. The rebar connected with a sickening thud, sending the creature skittering away, shrieking. They fought a desperate retreat. UV lights flaring, Milo swinging the rebar like a madman, Gabriel using his attunement to sense the surges of predatory intent moments before an attack, dodging snapping jaws and lashing tongues. The creatures moved with terrifying coordination, hurting them. They reached a heavy door, just as one of the large hunters leapt, aiming for Alara. Gabriel shoved her through the door and spun, taking the impact on his shoulder. Razor-sharp claws ripped through his jacket, searing pain lancing down his arm. He slammed the UV lamp directly into the creature's mouth cluster as it snapped his face. The creature shrieked, an ear-splitting sound of agony and rage, recoiling violently. Gabriel stumbled back through the door, Milo slamming it shut just as another body thudded against the metal. Milo jammed the rebar through the handle, a temporary brace. The steel door vibrated under the impact from the other side, the furious shrieks muffled but terrifying. They ran, Alara gasping, Gabriel clutching his bleeding shoulder, Milo urging them on. The dose rate on the Geiger counters was spiking dangerously. They didn't stop until they burst out of the drainage culvert into the marginally fresher night air, collapsing onto the damp ground, lungs burning. Alara stared back at the dark maw of the culvert, tears cutting tracks through the grime on her face. "They're awake," she whispered. "And they're strong." Gabriel examined his wound. The claw marks burned, the edges faintly luminescent. "And they're evolving," he added grimly. The UV hurt, but they were learning to mitigate it quickly. They're not just animals. There's intelligence, coordination. He felt the echo of that collective hum, the cold hunger now mixed with frustration, and a renewed, sharper purpose. They knew they'd been discovered. They'll move. Soon. They need a new energy source. Milo, panting, pulled out his phone. Right. So, time to call in the big guns? Army? Men in black? Anyone with really big UV spotlights and maybe a flamethrower? The government sealed it up once and forgot, Gabriel said, wincing as he applied pressure to his shoulder. They'd likely just bomb the site, contain the immediate threat, bury it again. But what if spores escaped? What if some creatures are already outside the perimeter? We need to understand how to stop it, not just contain the symptoms. We need its weakness. The journals, Alara said, her voice gaining strength through her exhaustion. My notes, the initial analysis. There was something about harmonic resonance, the hum it made. They tried playing specific frequencies near the sample. It caused distress, like feedback, but they never perfected it. The war, a frequency, Milo said, eyes lighting up, a cosmic raspberry. We find the right note, we give their hive mind a sonic wedgie. He looked at Gabriel's glowing wound, his forced grin fading. But first, we gotta get you looked at. Glowing claw marks are generally not covered under wellness. And we need better gear. Like hazmat suits woven from pure skepticism and maybe some tactical sarcasm. The next 48 hours were a blur of frantic research, clandestine acquisition, and escalating dread. Gabriel's wound was cleaned and bandaged by a discreet veterinarian Alara knew, who confirmed the luminescence was a biological phosphorescence, likely a byproduct of the creature's biology, but couldn't guarantee it wasn't also slowly poisoning him. The burning sensation persisted, a constant reminder of the alien presence. Locked in Alara's spare room turned war room, they pored over her coded journals. Milo's photographic memory was invaluable, cross-referencing symbols, chemical formulas, and a fragment of reports of the initial science team. Gabriel focused on the emotional resonances recorded in Alara's shorthand, the dissonance noted when specific audio tests were run, the agitation frequencies. He mapped these subjective notes against the technical data. It's not just one frequency, Gabriel concluded, circles under his eyes deepening. He pointed to a complex waveform diagram Milo had reconstructed. It's a carrier wave, that deep hum we felt, modulated by overlapping patterns, like language or a distributed neural net. The initial test caused disruption by hitting resonant frequencies that created destructive interference within that network. So, we need an empathic mixtape? Milo asked, already sketching circuit diagrams. A sonic shotgun blast of bad vibes, more like a targeted empathic scalpel, Gabriel corrected. We need to isolate the core resonance of the collective consciousness, the hunger signature I felt strongest, and find a frequency that disrupts its cohesion. If we can shatter the hive coordination, even temporarily, individual creatures might be more vulnerable. Milo scavenged parts from old radios, synthesizers bought with cash from a pawn shop in Knoxville, and even the guts of a discarded karaoke machine. His hands flew, soldering wires, programming a Raspberry Pi, connected to powerful military surplus sonic projectors they'd liberated, with significant funds diverted from Milo's Alien Hunter meetup coffers from an online auction. Call it the Hive Harmer 3000, he muttered, connecting a final wire. Patent pending, assuming we survive. Meanwhile, the outside world was catching up. News reports detailed a contained hazardous materials incident near the old X-10 site, advising residents to avoid the area. But Alera's contacts, old-timers who remember the secret city's true cost, reported strange things. Power fluctuations in nearby grids, pets acting erratically, and a chilling increase in the glowing wildlife sightings, now moving further afield. The children were spreading, probing. Gabriel felt it too, a growing pressure in his mind, the collective hunger becoming a tangible pull. His wound pulsed in sync. It was learning him, sensing his attunement. They were running out of time. On the second night, as Milo tested the Hive Harmer, producing a sound that made the neighbor's dog howl and shattered teacup, Alera received a panic call. Her friend Ben, a night watchman at the perimeter of a small, private medical research facility on the outskirts of Oak Ridge, a facility specializing in experimental radioisotopes for cancer treatment, reported glowing things scaling the fences. Like big, radioactive possums from hell. They're going for the main storage. The target was clear. The children had found their next meal. They arrived at the Helios biotech facility to chaos. Security lights strobed across manicured lawns. Distant shouts and the crackle of radios mixed with an unnerving chorus of high-pitched shrieks and that now-familiar, bone-deep hum. Two security guards were firing pistols wildly into the darkness near a low, windowless building marked isotope storage. High security. Muzzle flashes illuminated glimpses of nightmare. Multi-limbed shapes darting with impossible speed. A guard being dragged screaming into the shadows. His cry abruptly cut off. Too late for subtle, Milo yelled, grabbing the bulky Hive Harmer unit. It looked like a mutant boombox strapped to a car battery. Gabriel hefted a powerful UV floodlight. Alera, armed with a shotgun loaded with rock salt shells, won't kill him, but stings like the devil. Stay by the car as their mobile command center, a radio link open. They sprinted towards the storage building. Creatures turned towards them, smaller scouts with glowing barbed tails, two of the larger hunters. Gabriel swept the UV light, forcing them back with shrieks of pain. Milo ducked a lashing tongue, rolling and coming up firing a blast from a high-powered industrial paintball gun loaded with UV reactive dye. It splattered across a hunter's flank, making it glow brighter and shriek in outrage, momentarily disoriented. They reached the heavy doors of the isotope storage. The lock was melted, warped from the inside by intense heat. Gabriel pushed it open. Inside was pandemonium. The main storage room was bathed in the eerie, shifting light of the biomass. Tendrils snaked across the floor, up the walls, converging on the heavily shielded isotope vaults in the center. The vault doors were partially breached, warped metal glowing cherry red where concentrated bioacid had been applied. Dozens of creatures were at work. Smaller ones secreting the acid, larger ones tearing at the softened metal. Others clustered near the vaults, their body masses pulsating rapidly as they absorbed the intense radiation leaking from the breaches. They were growing visibly, their forms becoming more defined, more armored. The hum was deafening here, a physical pressure that vibrated Gabriel's teeth. He felt the collective mind, a vast, cold intelligence focused solely on consumption, expansion, a hunger that dwarfed anything he'd sensed before. One of the hunters, larger than any they'd seen, its hide thick with crystalline plates, turned from a vault, its head cluster pulsed, locking onto Gabriel. It recognized him. The resonance from his wound screamed in response. It let out a guttural roar that shook the room, drowning out the others. The Prime, now Milo, Gabriel yelled, bracing himself against the empathic onslaught of focused malice from the Prime. Milo slammed the hive harmer down, flipping switches. Ladies and glow beasts, prepare for the ultimate diss track. He punched a button. Nothing happened. Milo stared at the unit. Oh, come on. Not now. The Prime surged forward, claws outstretched, lamprey mouth gaping. Gabriel raised a UV light. But the creature seemed to brace itself, its plates absorbing the light, dimming only slightly. It was adapting faster. Frequency, Milo. The core resonance. Gabriel shouted, dodging a swipe that tore a gash in the concrete floor. He focused inward, past the pain, past the fear, reaching for the pure, chilling essence of the collective hunger he'd felt in the chamber, amplified 1,000-fold here. He felt its waveform, a deep, pulsing thrum overlaid with chaotic, grasping harmonics. Lower, the bass wave, and modulate, dissonance on the secondary pattern. The grasping, the need. Milo's fingers flew over the keyboard, adjusting dials frantically. Bass wave down, dissonance on the tertiary uptake. Got it. Take 2, you overgrown glowworm. He hit the button again. This time, the hive harmer emitted a sound that wasn't so much heard as felt. A deep, discordant thrum-thrum whine that vibrated through the floor, through their bones. It hit the resonant frequency of the collective consciousness, like a hammer blow. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic for the hive. The Prime stumbled, roaring in agony and confusion, its head cluster flaring erratically. Creatures working on the vault shrieked, dropping tools, clawing at their own bodies, as if trying to tear out the noise. The pulsating biomass on the walls convulsed, its light stuttering. The harmonious hum shattered into a cacophony of pained shrieks and discordant screeching. The coordination was gone. Creatures turned on each other in blind panic, lashed out at the walls, stumbled blindly. UV, now! Gabriel yelled, sweeping the high-intensity beam across the disoriented horde. Without the hive mind's coordination to mitigate it, the effect was devastating. Creatures shrieked, their light dimming rapidly, movements becoming jerky, uncoordinated. The biomass recoiled, shriveling where the light touched it. Milo grabbed a fire extinguisher, blasting concentrated CO2 at the breached vault doors, cooling the metal, sealing the leaks temporarily. Sealed the buffet. The Prime, though visibly suffering, was more resilient. It shook its massive head, the nodules flaring with furious, pained light. It focused on Milo, the source of the agonizing sound. It charged, a juggernaut of rage and glowing flesh. Gabriel saw it coming. He didn't think. He dropped the UV light and stepped directly into the Prime's path. He didn't raise his hands to fight. Instead, he opened his empathic sense wide, focusing not on fear or resistance, but on projecting the opposite of the hive's cold hunger. He projected the warmth of the sun on leaves, the complex grief of Alera's decades of silence, the fierce, protective love Milo radiated even in his chaos, the profound sorrow of the land poisoned by man's ambition. He projected life in all its messy, emotional, radiant complexity. The Prime slammed into him. Gabriel flew backwards, crashing into a console, pain exploding through him. But as the Prime reared over him, lamprey mouth gaping, ready to deliver the killing bite, it hesitated. Its head clustered pulse erratically, confusedly. The projected emotions were a sensory overload, a psychic storm utterly alien to its existence of pure consumption. It recoiled, shaking its head violently, letting out a baffled, almost wounded screech. The dissonance from the hive harmer, combined with this empathic assault, was too much. Seizing the moment, Alera appeared in the doorway, her shotgun braced. Boom! A blast of rock salt hit the Prime square in its mouth cluster. It wasn't lethal, but the intense, localized sting at its primary sensory organ was a final straw. The Prime shrieked, a sound of pure agony and disorientation, and turned, blundering blindly through its own panic offspring, crashing out through a side door into the night. The sonic assault, the UV, the empathic counterstrike, and the Prime's flight broke the remnants of the hive will. The creatures, leaderless and sensorily overwhelmed, fled in disarray, scrambling after their Prime or vanishing into ventilation shafts. The pulsating biomass on the walls dimmed, becoming inert, slimy residue. Silence descended, broken only by the crackle of damaged electronics, their ragged breathing and the fading shrieks from outside. The isotope vaults, though scarred, were still largely intact. The immediate threat was over. Dawn found him exhausted, bandaged Gabriel's shoulder wound now cleaned and showing no further luminescence, though the scar would remain, and sitting on the hood of Alera's old truck, watching hazmat teams and federal agents swarm the Helios facility. Official reports were already coalescing, a hazardous biological contaminant, likely mutated fungi or bacteria from the X-10 site, drawn to radiation, contained, cleanup underway. The glowing wildlife sightings would become exaggerated folklore. The deeper truth was buried. Again, scientific horizons, alerted by Gabriel's encrypted report, would likely quietly acquire the remaining inert biomass for study under extreme containment. The search for the Prime and the scattered children would continue, a silent war in the shadows. Alera watched the activity, a profound sadness in her eyes, but also a hard-won peace. "I bore witness," she said quietly. Finally, she placed a hand on Gabriel's good arm. "You faced a hunger with something stronger. You gave them back a piece of their own darkness." Milo offered Gabriel a surprisingly intact protein bar. So, cosmic empathy is a weapon. Who knew? Though next time, maybe just let me hit it with the sonic wedge harder. He looked towards the woods, hiding X-10, his usual levity subdued. "You think the big guy is still out there?" Licking its psychic wounds. Gabriel stared at the tree-lean, feeling the fading echo of that vast, cold hunger, now tinged with something new. Confusion, perhaps even a nascent, alien form of fear. The land still felt wounded, the resonance of violation lingering. His own connection to the unnatural had deepened, scarred by the encounter. "Yes," he said softly, "it's out there, and it remembers. The children are scattered, but the parent survives. The archive," he echoed Percy Hawthorne's words unconsciously, "is never truly complete." He felt the weight of that knowledge settle upon him, a chilling counterpoint to the rising sun. The secret heart of the Manhattan Project had birthed more than just the atomic age. It had nurtured an ancient, ravenous visitor, and while its latest brood had been scattered, the mother of gloom still lurked in the poisoned Tennessee woods, a living legacy of mankind's most terrible power, waiting, learning, and hungering for the next bright pulse of energy on a darkling world. And so, the ledger on this particular strangeness closes, for now. Oak Ridge sleeps a little easier, perhaps blissfully unaware of the darkness that still stirs beneath its verdant hills, born from the secret fires of its creation. Remember, the world hums with more mysteries than answers. Some are buried in the earth, some in the stars, and some in the unintended consequences of our own reach for power. Keep your eyes open, your mind curious, and perhaps carry a spare coffee for a friend. You never know when they might need fortification against the lingering chill of the unexplained. This is Percy Hawthorne, reminding you, the archive is never truly complete. Good night.